Okay, so I hope everyone's well. Hope everyone's doing well in their spiritual journey. And we have a very interesting discussion today on a very interesting topic. So I was speaking to Sham Govinda, and we came up with this decision about what we're going to discuss today. And it's a very interesting topic for a number of reasons. It speaks to the situations that we're in right now. This topic also speaks to how we are, and I use that word very strongly, how we're going to be more effective in navigating through our lives and moving on our spiritual journey. Okay, so this is a really important topic, and we'll begin this point here. That life is full of opposites. Okay, so in this seminar, we're going to understand why it's important to reflect. We're going to understand the effect of not reflecting. We're going to understand how it can make a distinct difference to our lives. And we're going to get a sense of how, by reflecting more, we're bound to have a greater experience in literally all areas of our lives. Okay? And this is all about how we can apply this idea to Krishna consciousness. Okay, so let's begin here. So we have decided that life is full of opposites, and it's just the nature of the material world, duality. So right now, there'll be some people who are going to be born, right? So someone somewhere will be in pregnancy, and her baby will be due at a certain time. At the same time, we're seeing that someone is preparing to leave the world. Now, whether they are leaving peacefully, whether they are in a hospital, whether they are with loved ones near and dear, someone is preparing to leave and someone is preparing to come in. That's duality. We may see that someone may be famous today, right? So you think about the Harvey Weinsteins, the Bill Cosbys of this world. One day they are all the rage. Everyone is speaking about them. They're famous, they're prestigious, they're glorified today. Tomorrow they could become infamous. Me Too campaign, right? The person from being perceived in this way is now being perceived in completely the opposite way. Life is full of dualities. And one of the biggest dualities in life is the idea that to speed up, oftentimes, in order to speed up, we have to first learn to slow down. Okay? So we're going to discuss this. You see, many of our challenges in life are very much due to moving too fast. Okay? In the modern society, there's a certain pattern that we see where in modern life, we're too quick to act, too slow to think, too scared to see. Think about that. Too quick to act, too slow to think, too scared to see. Too quick to act is when passion takes over. We see that in the modern Western societies, especially modern society generally, where there's passion. I may do something. I'm very active, very driven, making things happen, but it's all activity. It's not necessarily grounded in thought, in strategy. So too quick to act, too slow to think. And in one sense, it's not a criticism of people. The very patterns of modern life make it such that very much there's an emphasis on just doing, and there's not so much an emphasis on understanding what's worth doing. And it plays out in literally all the different areas of our life. And it can lead to many different challenges and difficulties. So too quick to act is passion. Too slow to think means that there's a lack of strategic thinking. There may not be the right balance of action to thinking, because action is good. Thinking is good, but we need to have the right balance. And then the last one, too scared to see. Being too scared to recognize the truth of a situation means that I'm now dealing with the mode of ignorance. Too quick to act, too slow to think, too scared to see. When the mode of goodness kicks into a person's life, they don't necessarily recognize the truth of a situation. Right? What is it that we say in modern society? We say that that person is in denial, right? And we've all been there. We've all been in a situation where something was emerging in our life, something was emerging in our association, something was emerging in our circumstances or relationships, and it wasn't good. It wasn't positive. But because it was also a painful reality, a difficult reality, we closed our eyes and we were hoping that when I open my eyes again, that situation will disappear. But of course it doesn't. When there's something that needs to be addressed and we don't address it, usually the situation does not disappear. Usually the situation becomes worse and worse and worse, to the point that now something that was this big and relatively easy to address has now become this big. I'm going to go on the screen. Has now become this big. And because it's become this big, it's much harder to actually deal with. And for many of us, it's the story of our lives. So there's a lot that Krishna consciousness has to offer in this area. And we're going to make it very practical. We want to give you some practical things to take away from this so that you can experience Krishna consciousness in a deeper and more powerful way. We want to give you some practical things so that you will swim in the ocean of nectar of Krishna consciousness, go deeper in that Krishna consciousness, draw more mercy from Krishna, and through your increasing realization and experiences, have a greater and more solid faith in our process of Krishna consciousness. Right? And these things can be done, and they can be done consistently, continuously, and one can feel just how powerful Krishna consciousness actually is. Huh? Okay, so we're talking about this idea of being reflective. There's an interesting story that I came across. So there was a frog, and there was a tree that was kind of over the frog. And this frog had some special capability. He was a mystic frog, and he was basically trapped under the tree, and he was begging for help. Please help me, I'm trapped, I need to get out. And the frog the frog was calling out, says, anyone, if you could help me, then I will grant you some free wishes. Anyone, if you can help me, just help me get out from under this tree, I will grant you free wishes. There was a lady who walked by, and she heard the frog, and she saw him trapped under the tree. The tree was was leaning down. She pushed the tree, and the frog was able to escape. And the frog said to the lady, thank you so much for rescuing me. Thank you so much. And the frog was about to leave, and she said, hold on. You promised that if I help you to escape, you would grant me free wishes. And the frog said, that's true. I will grant you free wishes. And the frog said, but there's one thing I forgot to tell you. Whatever wish I grant you, your husband will have to receive 10 times as much of whatever you've requested. Okay. And the woman said, I don't mind, no problem. And the frog said, okay, no problem. So what are your wishes? So the woman, she said to the frog, I want you to make me the most beautiful woman in the world. And the frog said, I don't mind doing that, but remember, your husband will be 10 times as attractive as you are. And she said, that's fine, because if I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, he will only have eyes for me. So the frog granted her the wish, and that woman became the most beautiful woman in the world. And her husband was 10 times as attractive. So she was very happy. The frog was about to leave. She said, but I have a second wish. Frog said, what's your second wish? She says, I want you to make me the richest person or the richest woman in the world. That's it. The frog said, okay, but remember, if I do this for you, your husband will be 10 times as wealthy as you are. You okay with that? She said, absolutely, fantastic. So, wish was granted. So not only was she the most beautiful woman in the world, she was the richest woman in the world. And her husband was 10 times as wealthy as she was. And then the woman stopped to think, because she had one more wish. So we're talking about reflection. So she reflected. And the frog said, have you decided what your third wish is? She said, yes. She says, I want you to grant my wish that I may suffer just a very mild, very slightly mild heart attack. Just mild so it doesn't kill me. And the frog granted her that wish. She had a very slightly mild heart attack. And I think you can understand what her husband experienced. So she became the wealthiest person, full stop. Not just the wealthiest woman, but the wealthiest person, full stop. So there's a power, not that we use it in that particular way, but there's a power in this idea of reflection. Okay? There's a very interesting understanding that's coming out in the professional field. They've done studies of managers. They've done studies of managers to see the ones who are the most effective, what are they doing differently to everyone else? And the reason why we bring this up is because all of us are managers. We're managers of our life. We're managers of our relationships. And most importantly, we're trying to endeavor wisely in our Krishna consciousness. We're trying to engage in Krishna consciousness in a way that's going to be optimal, in a way that's going to allow us to really experience Krishna, in a way that's going to allow us to make the most progress, to have the most realization or purity, because the more that we carry Krishna consciousness abundantly and deeply, the more that it spills over into all areas of our lives. So in the studies about managers who are highly effective, it was so incredible. They did these studies, they found only 1 in 10 managers were considered to be highly effective. So they explored, they would observe these managers, they would speak to people who were around these managers, trying to understand, what are these guys doing differently to everyone else? And one of the key things that they found, and I saw this personally with one spiritual master who I'll talk about in a moment, what they found was the managers who were the most high performing were the ones who had a certain type of habit. And one of the key habits that they found was that those managers who were high performing, who were able to do amazing and extraordinary things, they had put into their life regular time to reflect. Think about that. Those managers had put time in their life on a regular basis, time to reflect, and it was incredible. Now, when I read about this, I had like a flashback. I had a flashback to seminars where my own mentor, my own guru, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he was speaking about our community, ISKCON community. And he said that one of the biggest challenges we have in our community is that we do not take time to reflect and think. He said we do not take regular time to have inventory. What does inventory mean? Inventory means that I'm stepping back from the day-to-day run of the mill. And as I'm stepping back from the day-to-day run of the mill, what am I doing? I'm using that time to reflect on how is my spiritual life going. I'm using that time to reflect, how are my relationships going? I'm using that time to reflect, how are my services going? And in that reflection, I create space. I create space for a greater possibility. He was explaining how important it is to have time for inventory. I was on the phone to someone and they were talking about a conversation they had recently with a non-devotee. And they had asked that person just to give their reflections on something that was going on in their life. And the person is very interesting because the person was a very mode of goodness person. He had some really powerful reflections. And in the reflections, he was able to see what was happening in his life and able to understand some key messages about what life was teaching him. And as I was having this conversation, the person was just telling me that they realized that because he was reflective, he was able to capture some real key messages that life was trying to give him. And this is one of the most powerful things that we get if we carve out the time in Krishna consciousness to reflect. Reflection time in Krishna consciousness has certain potencies. What can it give us? It can help us to save time. Okay? There are many people, and I was discussing this on the call with some devotees earlier today. There are many people who don't know who they are. And when a person does not know who they are, they also have weaknesses in other areas of life. In other words, no ID, no impact. When I don't know who I am, it becomes very difficult to work out where I should be spending my time. Because that same cloud of ignorance, which is coming over me, which does not help me to understand what kind of capabilities I have, what's going on, where I should be moving, it clouds my steps. We were talking about how in the Vedas, it talks about this idea of Varna Shankara, right? And that another way of understanding Varna Shankara is people who are confused about who they are. And also linked to that, one thing is to be confused about who they are. When you add to that a confusion about what life is, those two things are ignorance multiplied. I don't know who I am, and I don't understand how life works. There are many people, for example, who think that just by having the right job, they'll be happy, but that's not true. That it's important to have the right kind of situation, or to have a favorable situation as much as possible. But ultimately, in our tradition, our Siddhanta says that the ultimate happiness is Krishna consciousness, is developing our dormant relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The career can be supportive of that, should be supportive of our ashram. But in the ultimate analysis, if we don't develop that relationship, there will always be some sense of lacking, some sense of insecurity, or some sense of emptiness. So we want to encourage you to start a revolution in Krishna consciousness. I gave class at the Manor, I believe it was quite a few weeks ago now. One of the things I shared in the class is I felt that this movement, our ISKCON community, can be probably 100 times more effective, efficient, and successful. Not by working harder. Not by working harder. Just by rearranging who does what. And taking that ability to step back and reflect and think, you know what? I can see that you've got this capability, meaning this much time and energy, and you've got this skill. So if I look at your capabilities, how much you can give, if I look at what you can give, rather than having you in this position, why don't we put you in this position where that same ability is amplified, where you can give a lot more? And if we change your position, not only can you give a lot more, but because you're doing something that you love doing, we don't need to keep motivating you, because your very service is actually giving you nectar. The very thing that you're doing is sustaining you. And instead of offering this much to the ISKCON community, you can offer this much to the ISKCON community. The last few years, one of the things that has struck me, I mean, it struck me like a thunderbolt, to be honest with you, is how Krishna's system is the most efficient and the most effective. When we do things according to Krishna's system, he achieves many purposes at the same time. He's so incredibly efficient. So a key part to enable us to live life with nectar, to position ourselves best in Krishna consciousness, is to take inventory, is to be more reflective, not completely reflective. As I said, we're too quick to act, too slow to think, too scared to see. What this means is that our life should be like a good meal, or like a good sabji, right? A good sabji, a good sabji has all the right ingredients in the right balance. It's not just thinking. If you just think and don't do, nothing gets achieved. It's not just acting. If we act without thinking, then our actions aren't as optimal as we could make them. And we'll come back to that point in a moment. But the third step is also important. If I have the right balance of strategic thinking, if I have the right balance of activity, and if I have the right balance of observation, then my life becomes absolutely deadly in a positive way. So the right balance of thinking informs the activity that I do. And when I perform the activity, I then observe. What does observation do? Observation allows me to refine my application of Krishna consciousness. So it's a build. It starts with thinking, right? So then, actually, it's more than that. It starts with thinking, and that thinking is based upon transcendental knowledge. So in our scriptures, it talks about these stages, Shravana. Shravana gives me this transcendental knowledge. Right? I'm gonna also apply that knowledge, right? I'm gonna apply it carefully, wisely. And in the application of it, I'm gonna start to see, I'm applying what I've learned. What's happening? What am I seeing as the result of the application of what I've learned? And as I observe the application and the reciprocation that comes in the external world and in the internal world, it's gonna give me clues to do more of something, to do less of something, as I become better at applying Krishna consciousness in my actual life. Now, this point about internal and external is really powerful. Sometimes Krishna is giving us internal reciprocation, because I will do something in Krishna consciousness and I'll feel, wow, I just feel so much more enthusiastic now. Wow, I just feel I understand myself better now. Wow, I find that I can chant my rounds better because of what I did. I'm consciously encouraging devotees to read, and I found a really wonderful quote about reading, and I'm actually going to share it with you because it reinforced something that I'd experienced in my own spiritual life. And I thought this is something that I'd like to share with so many others. And so I'm just going to share this with you. And it's actually a quote that was sent to me by one of my mentees. And it was from one of the books of my own spiritual mentor. And he's just talking about the power of reading and reflecting on the philosophy. And it was just a very beautiful but very powerful section that I'd experienced myself. Because when I'd done this, I saw it made a big difference, not only to my experience of Krishna consciousness in general, but it also affected the way that I was able to even chant. So I'm just going to actually share this with you, because I think this is something that can also help you experience a greater positivity in your own Krishna consciousness as well. Okay, so let me just find this so I can share this with you, and then we're going to have some further discussion. on this. Okay, so this is reading. Okay, let's go to this. Okay, actually, I'm just going to tell you the point because I can't find the exact quote. But the point that's being made here is that there are different types of consciousness. There's different types of mentality. And our movement, it often attracts people who have an interest in connecting with knowledge and cultivating knowledge. So in the quote that I was sent, it talked about how we have some people who are very intellectual or very Brahminical. And they want to understand things. They want to churn understanding. They want to use knowledge and wisdom. And the point that was made was that this is very, very powerful if they use it properly. The point was made that if we have that kind of inclination to cultivate knowledge, cultivate wisdom, if we use it properly, it can really accelerate our devotion. What it does is it strengthens the spiritual intelligence which controls the mind. Now that's not a small thing. What could you do in life if you were able to control your mind? Think about that. Your chanting will become more focused. Your ability to interact with others will be more focused. Your efficiency in getting things done will be more focused because you are able to direct your mind rather than your mind directing you. And if you're able to direct your mind to spiritual activities and to be absorbed in that way, you would literally make much faster progress in Krishna consciousness. It's an incredible gift. Think about that. The ability to control and direct your mind in literally every single circumstance. So when you're chanting, someone else is chanting, they're getting 10% of the benefit because their mind's wandering off 90% of the time. You're the opposite. When you're chanting, you're getting 90% of the benefit because 90% of the time your mind is fully focused on the mantra. So you're literally making 10 times as much progress in Krishna consciousness as someone else, even though you're both doing the same thing. And that goes on. That goes on. Now, in Krishna consciousness, as we said, too quick to act, too slow to think, too scared to look. If we turn that around, something very powerful happens. One is that there's greater progress, but there's also greater wisdom. What would it be like if all of us were wiser? We have a mythology that takes place in Krishna consciousness. People think that I understand just by reading the books or hearing the class. Not exactly. We get something, but we can amplify our understanding. How do we do it? We explained that the first stage is Shravana, hearing. So when we hear the philosophy or read the philosophy, that hearing, that gives us knowledge. Okay? It gives us knowledge. But that's just the beginning of the process. There's more to it. If we take the next step, first stage is Shravana, so I hear, therefore I gain knowledge. Second step is Manana. Manana is something different. Manana means I reflect on what I've heard. This is a step that we often miss in Krishna consciousness. I saw in my own life that when I do Shravana, I will pick up some knowledge. If I go to another class or read another book, I pick up something else. Again, Shravana, I pick up some knowledge. But it was only when I start to reflect on the different gems that I picked up. When I started to bring them together and reflect on them, then something amazing started to happen in my own life. I started to go beyond the different pieces of information, the different points, and I dropped down into understanding. So when you hear and reflect on what you hear, manana, then we get understanding. And when I started to learn that, I started to see that there were many devotees who'd read so many things, heard so many classes, but didn't actually understand what they'd picked up. Because the way that they were living their life was such that it was literally just getting information, but not churning it. They weren't churning the information, they weren't churning the wisdom. And you could see that because they weren't churning it, they didn't properly understand it. And because they didn't properly understand it, they had a disability. What's that disability? To the extent that I don't understand something properly, to that extent, I start to either misapply it or I don't apply it. And we have many people in our Krishna consciousness movement who, because they've not thought about what they've read or what they've heard, either they misapply the teachings or they do not apply it at all. And there's a feedback loop that happens. I'll tell you honestly, I can't even lie. I feel so much excitement about what will come in Krishna consciousness. Why? Because there's a feedback loop. When we take the teachings and we take the time to try to reflect and understand it, and when we apply it properly, Krishna reciprocates. And when Krishna reciprocates with you, it inspires a deeper excitement, enthusiasm, and faith to take the next step on our journey. Faith breeds faith. Bhakti breeds bhakti. So that when we take that step to start to churn what we hear, what we read, and think, what does that mean for me? How could I apply some of this in my life? And you apply it properly, wisely, you start to experience just how potent and powerful this treasure chest of divine knowledge is. And it gives you even more faith and more excitement to be even more dynamic in your Krishna consciousness, because you think to yourself, wow, if this is what I'm experiencing just by applying this small amount, my God, what would my life be like if I apply more of it and more of it and more of it? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. People are looking for a dynamic and fulfilling life. If we don't experience it in spiritual circles, because we are dying for that taste, people will be forced to try and seek it in the mundane ways. And of course, even if they're trying to seek it in mundane ways, they won't find that nectar there. They won't find that happiness, because the real happiness and the real fulfillment comes when we fulfill our real goal. What is our real goal in life? I'm a spirit soul. I'm part and parcel of Krishna. Jivara Sarupaya Krishnera Nityadas. I'm his eternal servant. So happiness means to relish, recognize, and relate to Krishna. Yeah? Relate to Krishna through the medium of devotional service. I was thinking what happens in our movement, and how will this reflection practically benefit us in our lives? And I wanted to give you an example of this. I would like you to imagine a triangle. I'd like you to imagine a triangle that's upside down. So the bottom is the tip of the triangle, and as you look at it, it goes literally like that. And what Krishna is trying to do in our lives is to make our life actually more successful with less effort. And I really mean that. We sometimes think Krishna consciousness is very difficult, but it's not always like that. There are some challenges sometimes, right? But in many cases, Krishna consciousness can make our life much, much, much easier than the average person. And I want to show you how. So this upside down triangle, the tip of the triangle, the bottom of the triangle, we can call this divine intervention, okay? So that tip is where Krishna consciousness is saying to us, just do this one thing that's going to change everything. So for example, Krishna consciousness says, I would like you to chant Hare Krishna. We may think, oh, it's attentively, it's difficult, I've got to carve time out, but every time you chant Hare Krishna, you're burning off lifetimes of karma. Our scripture says that by chanting Hare Krishna, it can destroy more sins than one can even commit in a lifetime. So we often don't see things properly. We don't understand that when I'm chanting, I'm burning off literally millions of lifetimes of karma. Otherwise, because I'm not chanting, I would have to go through those millions of lifetimes and experience the reactions to those behaviors. But just by saying Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that's completely destroyed. So that's incredibly efficient. It's incredibly efficient. You just chant this mantra. Prabhupada says, by chanting this mantra, I will make death disappear. I will make the entire cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death, I will make it just disappear like that. So that's the first level, divine intervention. The next level above it, okay, a bit more work, but still divine intervention, but in a different way, is when you have an intervention through knowledge. So when we're talking about Krishna consciousness, it's still divine intervention, but it's through knowledge, through transcendental knowledge, which we are reflecting on. Okay, so transcendental knowledge, which I reflect on. If our modern society were to think, for example, if you're going to get married, what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is understand my nature, my values, and then don't even look at people who have different values to you, right? Find someone who's got similar nature, similar values, because then you will be able to get along with that person for decades, and it will be much less work to be in a relationship with that type of person. And Prabhupada explains like that, right? He says that the husband and wife should have similar tastes, similar values, etc. And don't get it twisted, by the way. There's a mythology in Krishna consciousness where people think, well, I'm interested in Krishna, this person's interested in Krishna, so therefore we have the same values. No. Krishna consciousness is actually like the material universe. The material universe is a paradigm. It's not just one small location, it's an entire paradigm. So there's variety in the material universes. Right? So for example, we know that there are demigods in the material universe, higher planetary systems. We know there are demons in the lower areas of the material universe, lower planetary systems. And we know that there's the Earth-like planets. So there's variety in the material universe. Just as there is variety in the material universe, there's variety in the spiritual universe. So just because you're a devotee and they're a devotee, it doesn't mean your values are the same. There are varieties within the association of devotees. Our goal is the same, but we have different ways of addressing that goal, different types of, or different lifestyles within Krishna consciousness. And we know this. Some devotees, they want to live simply. Their idea of Krishna consciousness is, I'm going to live near the temple. I'm going to live very simply. I'm going to work only the few hours that I need to, or maybe even just for a few months. Then I'll go to Vrindavan and spend the rest of the year in Vrindavan. So it's their style of Krishna consciousness. And their style of Krishna consciousness indicates that they have a certain value, certain types of values, which they will engage in Krishna consciousness. Another devotee is thinking, I'm also a devotee. I'm going to be a devotee by being in the work field. I'm going to engage that work life. I'm going to become the CEO of my company, and I'm going to wear tilak, and I'm going to engage the money and all of these different things. I'm going to tell my network about Krishna, etc. They're still a devotee. But because they have different values, they practice Krishna consciousness in a different way. So this point, first point is divine intervention. Divine intervention meaning the direct practice of chanting, for example. Then the second level, intervention via knowledge, via transcendental knowledge, right? Which is what we're speaking about. We hear, we reflect, and because we've heard and reflected on Krishna's teachings, we make much more powerful, wise, and long-lasting decisions, which will be nectar now, and which will just continue to be even more nectarian over time. Just think about that. The power of this transcendental knowledge. I hear, I reflect, and I apply this deeper insight to make my life even more successful. And what happens? When I do that, I remove issues and obstacles that other people didn't even see in my path. I've been doing an experiment. I've been doing my own reflection. One of the things I'm working on at this time, I'm looking and I'm thinking to myself, okay, Bhuta Bhavana, what are your fatal flaws? Okay, so every devotee has some strengths, every devotee has some weaknesses. But it's very powerful if you think and if you can work out, what are my fatal flaws? In other words, what are the weaknesses that I have that could be the most significant cause of my not making it back home, back to Godhead, or my falling away from Krishna consciousness? Right? Think about that. Do we ever ask ourselves that question? What's my fatal flaw? Because all of us have strengths and weaknesses. I'm not talking about weaknesses. It's not the same. Because someone may think I'm not good at singing. Someone may think I'm not good at leading. That's not a fatal flaw necessarily. Fatal flaw means, what is it about me that could derail me, that could cause me to miss out on this opportunity to go back to the spiritual world where they're just in ecstasy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the ecstasy continues. So I was doing this experiment for myself. What's my fatal flaw? What are my fatal flaws? Because rather than waiting for Maya to create a situation where I get tripped up, wouldn't it be more powerful if I go looking for that issue? If I go looking for the issue that could trip me up and actually address it and try to become stronger in that particular area. And then the other question I've been asking myself, what do I need to do? What's the most important or significant thing I can do that can allow me to really get the best in my progress in Krishna consciousness? So ultimately, yes, it is about the instructions, the general instructions, following the instructions of our seniors, our spiritual masters, but we can also do that reflection, right? I remember, I'll say honestly, I remember I had a dream. This was many years ago. And the dream, basically in the dream, one thing that came up was that for every devotee, there are particular qualities, or there's a particular attribute that helps them to make maximum progress in Krishna consciousness. I actually had that, I got that very clear. It's a very clear understanding that was given, you know? And it's amazing if you know what that is for you. If you know what that is for you, you can play to that strength and you will see you will make amazing advancement in Krishna consciousness. And that has a lot to do with reflection. So first level, divine intervention. Direct chanting Hare Krishna, completely make the material world disappear. You wake up, you're back in the spiritual world. Second level, intervention via transcendental knowledge. We hear and we reflect and we apply that. What happens when a person doesn't do this? The next thing is, it has to be an intervention through action. Okay? So, but action means corrective action. So because I didn't understand and make wise choices, now something bad has happened in my life. Some issue that I don't want has arisen in my life. And now because this issue has arisen, now what do I need to do? Now I've got to spend a lot more time and energy fixing an issue that I could have avoided in the first place. And it's, I'll be honest, my heart goes out when I see people go through that. I've had discussion with devotees. We sometimes see a situation through the eyes of Shastra. Shastra Chakshus, and we think, you know what, it's unfortunate. They could have avoided that. That whole issue could have been avoided earlier on. What Prabhupada has given us in Krishna consciousness is the ability to see the invisible, if we take advantage of the ability. And I really mean that. We as a devotee community, we've been blessed with transcendental knowledge. If we do the transcendental knowledge plus reflection, you can see an issue before it's even arisen. It's really powerful. Because of the work I do is leadership training and development, and this is relevant because we're all trying to lead our own life, lead our Krishna consciousness, apply the teachings better. I was reflecting on, it was an interview that was done at the university. And in the interview, it was an ex-prime minister. And he was speaking about how before he became prime minister, when he was just leader of the party, of a political party, he went to visit the president of the United States many years ago. At that time, Bill Clinton was the president. And they had an interesting conversation. And the prime minister said, as I was preparing to leave, before I left, the president said to me, before you leave, there's something really important I need to tell you. And this prime minister said that when he heard that, he thought, oh, hold on. He was a bit taken aback. He thought, this is interesting. I'm gonna get some special kind of secret knowledge. He said, I thought this president was going to tell me that there's a secret code that runs the world. And Bill Clinton said to him, he said, I want to speak to you about scheduling, about creating a timetable. And the prime minister thought, what, really? Like, that's all you're going to tell me, like, about scheduling? And, he thought, no, this isn't very, very important. But then what happened was Bill Clinton said to him something which is very, very relevant even for us. Bill Clinton said to this person, he said, you will find that one of the hardest things in life when you're in a position of leadership, and we can take it, one of the hardest things in life where we are leading our own lives and when life becomes busy, right? I often look at the young devotees and think, okay, you're a university and it's not that busy, but you wait till you start your job, have your family, and try to be Krishna conscious, try to balance this. So Bill Clinton said to him, he said, you'll find that one of the hardest things in life, especially when you're in a position of leadership, is to carve out the time to think strategically, right? He said, and if you don't, he said, the system will take you over. He said, what will happen is you'll be in meetings from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, and you'll think that you're incredibly busy, but the strategy and the tactics will have got mixed up. Now we can translate this for us in our devotee life. We'll wake up in the morning, chant the rounds. Then we have to go and do some service, and then we go to work, and then you come home. Then we got to do something with the family, and then we just and go to get to sleep, and it just goes on and on and on. And without having that time to reflect and to think, where am I on this journey? How's my chanting going? What's going well? How can I improve on it? Right? What's my association like? Right? How is my association? Am I associating with those devotees who are like-minded? Am I associating with those devotees who are helping me to understand how I can improve my Krishna consciousness? Am I associating with those devotees who can give me blessings and guidance on how to improve my Krishna consciousness? Am I even taking advantage of those devotees, if I am, by asking them, how am I doing? You know me, what am I doing well? Am I taking those opportunities? Or am I like 99% of the devotees for whom Krishna consciousness is like being on that hamster wheel, right? And I'm just running on the hamster wheel. I'm just running on the hamster wheel. I'm just running on the hamster wheel. And it just seems like that's all that there is to it. Am I taking a step back from the BAU, from the business as usual of my Krishna consciousness to see what's going well and to give that space that space for me to reflect on the teachings in good association? Am I given the space for Krishna's voice to show me how I can take my Krishna consciousness to the next level? I'm going to challenge you to create that space in your life. In this interview with this Prime Minister, what he does now is he consults world leaders. And the first thing he says to those world leaders is, where is your thinking time? Where is that space in your life, in your week, or in your day-to-day schedule? And he said that he saw something really interesting. He said that when he consults with leaders around the world, and again, think about your own life. We're leading our own life. We're trying to come closer to Krishna. He said he saw something very interesting. He said most leaders that he came to, they will tell him that these are my priorities. And he says that when we do a study of the time and focus of those leaders, they will say that these are their priorities, but they're spending most of their time and energy elsewhere, right? And he said something even more interesting. He said in life, he said, if you are not carving out the time to reflect and to take inventory and to positively improve, he said that what happens is things just keep coming at you. And this Prime Minister said that he reflected on his own period as a leader. And he said there was one emergency after another, right? You had one crisis, and then another crisis, and then another crisis. And then I was reflecting on something that I heard from my own gurus, my own spiritual teachers. And they said that if a devotee does not plan, if a devotee is not proactive in trying to improve their Krishna consciousness, I was told that Maya will plan their life for them. Maya's very clever. First level, let's just make the person a full-out atheist. Don't believe in God. Don't do anything spiritual. Leave that alone. Put that down. Put that japa bead bag down and back away slowly. Okay? So number one, make the person completely atheistic. But if Maya can't do that, if they got too many blessings, if they're too intelligent for that, strategy number two, okay, be Krishna conscious, but don't take it seriously, right? Don't take it seriously. You know, just come to the temple whenever you feel like it. You know, you can go to the deities and pray for a good exam result, and then just do your own thing. Don't, for God's sake, don't surrender, right? So first of all, just don't do it at all. If she can't stop you doing that, okay, do it, but be a hypocrite. Just, you know, go to God and just do it. Make it all about you. Ask him to give you what you want materially. Second level, if she can't do that, what she wants to do is try to make you so unconscious that you'll spend your entire life in mechanical devotional service. So you're just on that hamster wheel, right? You just go through the motions rather than going deeper, having that time to really think about your Krishna consciousness, get the insights of devotees who are around you, peers, juniors, and seniors, and allow Krishna's voice to come through to give you the additional insights that will take you into an explosively superior level of spiritual consciousness. That's what we have available to us, ladies and gentlemen, right? If we take that time out to reflect, you will see that Krishna will reveal to you so many incredible things that can literally take your Krishna consciousness to the next level. Now, what do I mean by this practically? I can see a few questions. So when's the best time to reflect? There's two steps. The first thing is, what's going to work for you? Because it's not one answer for everyone. Some of you will have children, okay? So you have additional responsibilities in terms of looking after your children, so you don't have the same flexibility around timing. Some of you have different types of work responsibilities. So there's the general principle and there's the application of the general principle. General principle is, if we can use the morning hours, the mode of goodness period, to reflect, it's optimal. Why? Because different modes support different types of behavior. In the Shastra, the Vedic kings would carve out their day or divide their day according to the modes. So the Vedic kings, they would use the early morning hours, the mode of goodness early morning hours for their spiritual practices and for their planning, their strategic reflection. Okay, what do I need to attend to in the kingdom? What, how are things going? What do I need to do today? So they would strategize using the sattva mode, the mode of goodness. Why? Because the mode of goodness is supportive of thinking, right? It optimizes thinking and spiritual practices. Then they would use the mode of passion hours, right? The from about 10 a.m. onwards through to 6, the mode of passion hours in the day, they would use that for execution. Why? Because the mode of passion is supportive of activity and getting stuff done. And then they would use the mode of ignorance hours, 6 p.m. onwards. For what? For rest, rejuvenation, and socializing. Why? Because the mode of ignorance hours are useful for rejuvenation, right? That's why, what do? In the evening, we do what? We sleep, right? So sleep means I'm utilizing the mode of ignorance in a rejuvenative way. Yeah. So the principle is, ideally, if you can use the mode of goodness hours, that's an optimal time to reflect. So early in the morning of your day, okay, what do I need to do today? What's the most effective and efficient way to do it? What can I do differently today to take my Krishna consciousness to the next level? How can I even execute my material duties a bit more efficiently or effectively so that I can have more time for hearing, chanting, reading, right? These are questions that we can ask ourselves in the mode of goodness that can make a huge difference. So that's the principle. But second is the application. Let's say that I don't have that morning hour available or that morning period. Then where you can, find some time, just some time to reflect. Reflection can be done by yourself. It can be done with other people. And it doesn't have to be every day either. You can do it once a week, whatever. I know some devotees, they have a strategic planning time where they will get on a call with another devotee friend and they'll reflect, how did my chanting go this week? How did my reading go this week? Right? What went well? What could I improve on? And I've seen that when they do this, it's a small change over small periods of time, which mean that over time, instead of it being this much progress, over time it's this much progress, because they've been stepping back and reflecting regularly. And that reflection on a regular basis, it's blessed that devotee with the mode of goodness. And what does the mode of goodness do? The mode of goodness outperforms the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance in the long term. So please, we want you to experience the full power, potency, and joy of Krishna consciousness. We want you to be relishing Krishna consciousness, to literally be as happy as possible in Krishna consciousness. Why? Because a happy devotee doesn't even have to say a word to preach. When you are overflowing, when you're relishing Krishna consciousness, you don't need to tell people. It radiates from your being. Yeah? When you are practicing Krishna consciousness in wise and powerful ways, then you start to see directly, wow, just look what Prabhupada has given us. And you can see how it's not just useful philosophy, it's effective and practical. It's effective and practical, and it's making new and amazing things happen in your life because you're more expert in applying it. And I want to give you a simple example, going back to this point, because I wanted to think, how do we bring this to life so that people really see what I mean? Okay, so let's look at the intervention through knowledge as opposed to correction through action. I'll give a very simple example. You can have a devotee has come to a point where he's at the age where he wants to get married, right? What does he do? What do many of us do? We'll just look for someone who's attractive. Okay, I've seen this girl. She's also a devotee. She's attractive. the honeymoon period feels right, nice, feels nice. She says nice things to me, I say nice things to her. So we get married, okay? So it wasn't so much based upon the reflection or knowledge. It was, she's attractive, I'm attractive, we have a nice experience together, we get married. Now, if by chance, and I do stress by chance, that person has very, very good karma for marriage, or they have a lot of blessings in that area. So by chance, the person that they happen to meet happens to be a person who's compatible with them, and all these other things are in place by chance. Okay, then things can go well. If not, if by chance it was just more attraction, physical attraction, then later on, even though it feels good in the beginning, because the mode of passion feels good in the beginning, Krishna says that, over time, issues will come up, right? And because the issues will come up, it can lead to arguments. It can lead to bitterness. Someone says something negative to their partner, it can leave a wound, an emotional wound. They may find there's some bitterness and resentment. They may struggle to forgive. It may get to a point where that couple want to break up, but you know what? But we've got kids, okay? So even though I don't like you, you don't like me, but because we've got children, I'm going to tolerate. Sometimes they may not even tolerate, or they may think, you know what? We need to get some help. So, okay, they'll go on the marriage counseling course, which is still useful, okay? But let's look at that situation. I made a decision. It wasn't based upon the guidance that was given by Prabhupada. And because I didn't do that work to understand, what does Prabhupada say about how to find a partner? What does our tradition say? What should I be looking out for? Not just what do I feel like looking out for, but what does Krishna, who is the supreme source of everything, what does he and his pure devotees say about what I should be looking for? Because I did not intervene on the level of transcendental knowledge, I just went on the level of feelings and emotion. Now, instead of a situation that's this small, I'm now having to deal with a situation that's this big. So that's the point I'm trying to make here. By taking things on the basis of wisdom and applying that wisdom, we save ourselves. Actually, you save yourself time, you save yourself money, and we can even save ourselves a lot of unnecessary difficulties and suffering. It is a mythology that Krishna consciousness just has to be difficult. Many of the difficulties that we experience in life is due to not having applied the teachings so wisely. Yeah, that's the point. There is the teachings, and then there's the wise application of the teachings. And in order to bridge that gap, it has a lot to do with this application. And in order to bridge that gap, it has a lot to do with reflection in order to understand how best to apply what we've been given. There's one other point I wanted to share, and then we'll take questions. So another thing that really hit me, and I have to say I'm very grateful to all of you that we've been able to give this presentation. I discovered something about myself. It was in the back of my mind. I'd seen it years ago, and I'd been slightly conscious of it, but I'd forgotten. Krishna revealed to me how and to what degree I was using my own faculties against myself. He showed me over periods of time how I would sometimes imagine a challenging situation, and I would see that challenging situation play out, and I would see myself responding to that challenging situation. And what Krishna began to show me again and again in my life, he showed me, he said, Bhuta Bhavana, I've given you so many gifts. And he showed me something that you may relate to. He showed me how many times in our own life we're using our gifts against ourselves. He showed me how many times in my own life I was literally engaged in mental self-sabotage. What do I mean by that? You see, we have a lot of mental energy. We have physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, etc. How many times, be honest with yourself, how many of you, and you can indicate using an emoticon, how many of you have in the past and maybe even in the present imagined situations that you did not want to manifest in your life? Let's be honest. How many of you have done that? Indicate. You can push the like button, the love button, indicate. How many of you have done that? How many of you indicated or done or imagined things playing out in your life that you didn't actually want to happen? Okay. Many of us. I'm definitely guilty of that. And what Krishna was revealing to me is, no. Do the opposite. What Krishna was revealing to me is he wanted me to be a proactive player by using my mental energy, by using the theater of my mind to imagine the positive Krishna conscious experiences and future that I wanted to be a part of. So for example, he wanted me to imagine yourself chanting. See yourself chanting and relishing your chanting. I want you to imagine yourself, Bhuta Bhavana, chanting your rounds with your mind fully focused on the chanting, hearing every single syllable of my name and really tasting it and thinking there is nothing better than chanting the holy names of Krishna. I want you to start to use the gifts I've given you in a way that will bring your Krishna consciousness forward. I could understand Krishna was showing me, Bhuta Bhavana, I want you to imagine you're giving Krishna consciousness to different audiences and then being completely receptive and the whole world becoming Krishna conscious. Bhuta Bhavana, I want you to use your mental culture, your mental energy to literally offer it to me by visualizing and seeing those things which are favorable to Krishna consciousness and to your devotional progress. Now just think about this point. Think about how many times we see the opposite. How many times we feed a reflection with our fear. Think about that. For many of us, there are so many positive experiences that we can have in Krishna consciousness if we just start to engage the mind more in thinking about what we do want rather than fearing what we don't want or leaving the mind vacant for Maya to fill that in with negative experiences. So I have two challenges to you. One is, where is your reflective time? Where's your spiritual strategic thinking time? Where are you going to put that time in to reflect? Okay, what's going well? What's not going so well? What can I do to take my Krishna consciousness to the next level? And it doesn't have to be a big game changer. It can be one thing, one small thing, but those small changes over time can make for powerful differences. Believe me, I've been using this in my own life and it's like night and day. I promise you, it's like night and day. And I'm on that journey as well of using my own mental culture positively. And I'll be honest with you, I can immediately feel some powerful effects. I can literally feel that by imagining myself chanting better, I'm starting to affect deeper levels of my own consciousness to move me in that direction. And it's incredibly exciting. So I'm going to encourage you to do the same. Let us fully utilize the God-given gifts that we have only in progressive ways. There's a saying that fear or worry is a prayer for something that we do not want. So from this point onwards, let us try to 100% bring our gifts to Krishna, offer them to Krishna by perceiving and visualizing and encouraging, expecting the best. Meditating on the things that we do want to see play out in our lives, not reflecting on or giving energy to the negative things that we don't want. when we have a negative thought, and when we charge or surcharge that negative thought with emotion, we are actually working against ourselves, and we're working against Krishna's plan for us. Right? If you think about Prabhupada and his example, Prabhupada, he said, my only disease is I cannot think small. And before Prabhupada left for the West, he had an interview with a newspaper, and he told the newspaper, I'm going to the West, I have thousands of disciples, we have temples, he had perceived and visualized all of these amazing things. Right? Now, of course, when we visualize, we should visualize for Krishna. We should visualize for Krishna, not just a material external situation, but we should try to have those visions that will be pleasing to Krishna, those visions that are going to increase the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement. They are going to progress our Krishna consciousness. They're going to give Krishna consciousness to more people. And if you do that regularly, you will see a miracle happen. Different types of miracles. The minimum miracle is that we become more enthusiastic and more inspired and more dynamic in our Krishna consciousness. That's the baseline. But oftentimes, based upon our karma or the blessings of the Lord and his devotees, there's always the potential that what we see, if it's Krishna's desire, then opportunities will open up in our own life where these miracles will be invited to us. We will receive an invitation to a miracle. Because what Krishna does is he's constantly sitting within our heart. And what's amazing is that with Krishna, he can see in our hearts that most of us, we're confused, to be really honest. Krishna's like, dude, you need to help me out here. What do you want? Because we just have all these hazy images. He sits in the heart and he sees you really don't, you're confused. You really don't know what you want, do you? Krishna, I'm not sure if I want this, or I'm not sure if I want that, Krishna, or, I'm scared that that's going to happen. And funnily enough, I'm always thinking about that thing, and I'm infusing that with energy. We're constantly thinking about what we don't want. This 2020, as challenging as situations may seem, this is a call for the spiritual warriors to step up. Honestly, Krishna is prepared to make miracles happen in the world, and more than that, he's prepared to make miracles happen through us. But we have to open the door by starting to use our gifts in the divine plan for a divine purpose, rather than engaging in this culture of mental self-sabotage. Yeah? So there's two things we want you to take away. The first one is, please, let's push this hard. Go 100% in just perceiving and imagining and really tuning into what you do want in your life. What do you want in your spiritual life, right? Let us imagine that day where we're so absorbed in our devotion that Krishna is pleased to reciprocate in so many wonderful ways. Let us imagine what it must be like to be in the spiritual world with Krishna and his pure devotees, and just what. Let's imagine what is it like to be completely inundated with spiritual energy and just feel incredibly infused to give ourselves in surrender to Krishna. Let us imagine literally entire countries and the heads of entire countries coming together, explaining and living in Krishna consciousness, not just one or two people, but entire countries, entire communities, entire continents. There's no loss. This is mental culture. This is Krishna consciousness, the mental culture being engaged in Krishna consciousness, because you're doing seva with the mind now, right? And that mental culture may start to break through into the physical reality. Think about that. Let us be infused by a vision of a brighter future where the Krishna consciousness movement It's completely established throughout the entire world. And it's like, wow, I can't believe it. That head of state, that prime minister is a devotee. He's got tilak on. Incredible. We should remember that by our own capability, what can we achieve? But by Krishna's blessing, there's nothing that we cannot be used to achieve. And to your point now, let's look at some of these comments. So let's start with Divyangana. Yes, it's easier to associate the negative, harder to engage in the positive. So we have to practice. Yeah. Everything in life that we've learned is because we've practiced that habit. So yes, it can be a challenge, but you know what? There's nothing to lose and there's everything to gain. There's everything to gain. Krishna has no favorites. Samoham sarva bhuteshu. So this 2020, and until we leave this world, ladies and gentlemen, we should know we can make a difference. And we should do everything we can to be the instrument of that difference. And it doesn't have to be externally big things, right? Everyone's service is appreciated. And that mental culture, that reflection, you can even imagine yourself being fully immersed in Krishna consciousness and fully inspired in Krishna consciousness every single day and fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and use that to infuse you. Please try that. So 2 takeaways. Number 1, where is your reflective time? Where is your strategic thinking time that you're going to use to reflect on what's going well, what's not going well? And please reach out to your associates to get feedback. I sent an anonymous feedback form to my mentees recently. And actually today's the deadline. And I'm going to read through their comments because, and I also spoke to friends, family, and I've been doing this for years actually. And to be honest with you, I've got so many gems from it because people who are around you, they see certain things about you that you may not see about yourself because we have a blind spot. So when you get that 360, I call it the loving 360, the Bhakti 360, right? Go for a Bhakti 360. 360 includes yourself. You reflect and you get the insights and the perspective of other people who know you, who see you, and who have that good intention towards you. And as long as you ask in such a way that they feel that you can honestly take what they're going to tell you, and as long as you ask the right questions, you will see some real Krishna conscious gems will come. Your reflection and Krishna through the association giving you some additional insights into how his divine plan can unfold in your life if you follow the right direction. So that's number 1, that reflection, that time to reflect and that association to reflect with. And number 2 is to also consciously use your mental culture. Let's practice. Let's not use the mind to sabotage or work against us. Let's not lean into the mind being the worst enemy. Let's lean into and let's start to make our mind more of our friend by but regularly. Don't do this as a one-off. You can even carve out some time to reflect on what you do want. And remind yourself, one of the things I'm doing in this period, and I'll be honest, I'm loving it. I can't lie, I'm loving it. I've got a whiteboard, I've got my schedule for the day, I've got another whiteboard, I've got my projects, right? And I've got so many things to do and they're incredibly exciting. And because I'm trying to share, I can honestly say I feel that Krishna is just flooding my heart with realization. It's just non-stop, more and more insight. You can share this, you can do that. There's this point, did you notice that? It's incredible, I love it. So let us do that. Let us use our mental culture to take us in the right direction. Let us use our mental culture to make us so strong that no matter what happens, you see, if we do this, you become very internally dynamic, spiritually dynamic. And when a spiritually dynamic force meets an obstacle, it just overcomes the obstacle. It overrides the obstacle. But if the car is not moving in a positive and dynamic direction, then the obstacles will slow you down or they'll stop you dead in your tracks. So the quality that we experience in a challenging situation is defined by what we've been doing before the challenging situation came about. Okay? So we want to see you happy, successful, blissful. We want to see you dynamic, divine, and driven in Krishna consciousness. And we know that there are many things that we can do. So try this, absolutely Divyangana. Let's do this Bhakti 360, okay? Find people that you trust who are going to be honest with you. How do I come across? You know, what do you think I should be doing more of? What do you think I should be doing less of? What do you think is my fatal flaw? Well, here's the thing, Bhuta Bhavana, I think you've got to be careful about this. This is a thing that could get you in trouble in Krishna consciousness. What do you think I'm not leveraging properly? Bhuta Bhavana, I don't understand why you're not doing this, this, and this. Right? Do it. Let Krishna speak his wisdom and his guidance through your association. And of course, get it confirmed, make sure it's in line with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. But do this. Let's make 2020 and every single moment of every single day count. Krishna consciousness is so exciting. Imagine a brighter, more divine future, not just for yourself. Imagine Krishna consciousness breaking out all over the world. No loss. Even if it doesn't happen in your lifetime, no loss. Even if it doesn't happen in your lifetime, because you imagined Krishna's desire, you'll become purified. Krishna will be pleased. The transcendental process is just so powerful. Okay, we'll stop there and see if there are any other questions or comments before we end. Any comments? If there are, feel free to drop them into the chat window and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so if there are no comments or questions, then what we'll do is we're going to end on that point. So thank you for hearing. Thank you for taking part of that. Okay, we have one question. How to come back from an experience of having trust broken by someone you had a connection of receiving that 360 loving with, conquering fear of being vulnerable. It's a really powerful point. So we were in India earlier this year actually it was with Radhanath Maharaj, and the question came up and he made a beautiful, very powerful and wise response. Because the question that was asked by one devotee was, the answer relates to your question, Kishore Gopal, so I'll just explain this. The question was, this devotee was saying to Maharaj, sometimes we want to be compassionate, but sometimes we're fearful that we're being sentimental rather than compassionate. How do we determine the difference between the two? So Radhanath Swami said to her, he said that real compassion is based upon vikshepa. That means it's based upon discrimination. So yes, we have to reveal the mind, but we should be wise about who we reveal the mind to, how we reveal the mind. So the 6 loving exchanges, which include revealing the mind, Prabhupada also writes one should be conscious and careful about who one reveals the mind to. So we should develop a relationship. It's not that we suddenly just tell everything to everyone, but we develop a relationship because we understand who we are. We want to get to know that person, and through that building of a relationship, we come to understand to the degree that they're trustworthy and mature, right? To that degree, we're able to share in that very, very sensitive things. But we should always make sure we have those people. That's the important point. And then the other point is, how do we come back from that experience? There's a very interesting thing I was listening to about this. And it very much parallels what we see in Krishna consciousness. We understand that this material world is a school. It's an education place to help us to learn how to come back to Krishna. So what helps us to let go of our negative triggers? So we have a wound, we have a hurt, We have a negative trigger because someone hurt us before. But we're made for love. We're made for association. We need association. What has been understood is that when we have a bad experience, the thing that can stop the trigger and that can allow us to trust people and be open again is by reflecting on that experience in order to gain the lesson. So why was I let down? What was it that was within my power that allowed me to have that negative experience? What is Krishna trying to teach me? So one reflection can be, you know what? It's not that being open and being and revealing my heart is wrong, but I did it with the wrong person. So Krishna's teaching me to use my discrimination better, to check and to build a relationship over time, rather than just revealing the mind, you know, in a kind of very open way without really properly assessing if this person, a person who is trustworthy. So that could be one lesson. Another lesson could be, you know, actually Christian showing me how to, when I'm hurt, how to have the courage to address it in a Vaishnava way. I remember we were in a meeting with Bhakti Maharaj, and one devotee was speaking about this, and Bhakti Maharaj gave some very wonderful advice about having these kind of very sensitive conversations when we're let down by people. You see, there's 2 points here. The first point, which Bhakti Maharaj made, is that when we have to address these things, we should try and do it in a very cultured way. So we may approach the person and say, Prabhu, you know, I shared or revealed this to you, and I found out that you told these people, and I felt a bit hurt. I felt, because I expected that you would keep what I said to you in confidence, you know. So please help me to understand. Maybe I'm understanding this wrong. Please help me to understand why you responded in this way instead of in that way. So you're addressing it. We're addressing it in Vaishnava etiquette. You're also able to get it out of your system, right? So you're not resentful. You're not just holding onto the pain. You're not just boiling with anger and frustration. But you've said what you need to say. They know that you know what's happened. But you said what you needed to say. But you said it in a way that also gave space to them in case there's something that we didn't understand. So they may say, you know, actually, no, I didn't tell them. They assumed that was what was going on in your life. I didn't say anything. Oh, I thought you told them because they came to me and said that. No, it was a misunderstanding. Oh, okay. So that's one thing. Another thing to add to this, and this is really important. One of the things that I've been having is a tremendous realization over the last few years, and it's changed the way I've seen Krishna consciousness, is that we have these expectations of people, but we should know what we can expect based upon scripture. So one of my mentees was explaining that he found that oftentimes devotees didn't make time for him. And I empathized with him. But I also said to him, I said, if you look at our devotee communities, oftentimes they've hardly got time for themselves, right? So in many cases, they've got children and they've got a full-time job. They've hardly got enough time to chant their rounds and spend some time with their partner. So I was explaining to him that we should also recognize the realities that people are dealing with. And what I was trying to suggest to him is that I'm asking you to adjust your expectation of those people, right? So if I know that this person has a health issue, they've got responsibilities to their elderly parents, they've got children, they've got a full-time job, they're married, then I should adjust what I can expect of them. Maybe the thing to do is not to expect that person to spend much time with me, because I know they've got very little time and energy. And maybe I should understand the reality that they're dealing with is such that they don't have much time. I should actually look to other association with people who have more capacity and willingness. Because we often don't do that. We often don't understand and empathize with what a person's going through. And therefore, we have the wrong expectations. That's point number one. Then point number two, because I've got the wrong expectations, they can't deliver on my expectations. That's point number two. And point number three is, I had the wrong expectations and they couldn't deliver on those expectations. Now I'm hurt. So sometimes it's about really understanding that what can I expect? What should I expect of this person based upon the parameters they are dealing with? And it also means based upon how mature they are. Sometimes a person isn't mature. Sometimes even, I've seen this in my own life, Christians show me something about a person. Sometimes in our work life, you may have a person who's gossiping about everyone. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, I get it. Christian is showing me that this person cannot keep quiet about others. They're gossiping about everyone. So what's Christian showing me? He's showing me that actually they can't keep things in confidence. So if you tell them stuff, they're going to be gossiping about you later on, right? Because the person is showing, or Christians showing me through their behavior what they are actually like. Yeah. So that's to Kishore Gopal's question. Sri Manjari, yes, the time to reflect. It can mean writing, it can mean thinking, it can mean meditating. So sometimes I will write, sometimes I'll reflect with other devotees, I'll discuss. So I'm thinking about this, I've got this idea, what do you think? And that reflection can be in the form of discussing different things with other devotees. But it's important to have the time to do that and to carve out that time for thinking, you know? Don't let Maya put you on the back foot, you know? Don't let Maya put you on the back foot. I've seen this in ISKCON. I've seen that most devotees, Maya, she's so clever. She's just got them on the back foot, right? They just spend their life reacting to things that are coming upon them. And I'm thinking, wow, Maya's she's so brilliant. She's so clever. She's got these devotees on lockdown, on the back foot. Their whole life is just reaction. And I see very few devotees, they don't allow that to happen. They carve out that space for reflective and spiritual strategic thinking, and they're loving it. Their spiritual life is incredible. Why? Because they are proactive in Krishna consciousness, not reactive in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so Nikhil. Okay, so thank you for your points relating to Shravana and Manana. I've also heard about Nididhyasana. Yeah, Nididhyasana means application. So when I take what I've heard from the teachings and from the association of devotees, so Guru Sadhu Shastra, I take that and I reflect upon that, then I start to test drive it. I start to apply it. So what I'm telling you, for example, I do this. I do this in my own life, and I'll be honest with you, I've seen incredible benefits. I've seen incredible insight. Sometimes we can see an issue when it's this small. I kid you not. We can see an issue when it's this small, and we can make small adjustments. And what I've seen in my life is generally it causes us to have a situation where the crisis doesn't come up, right? Because Krishna's like, dude, look, this is blipping on the radar. Blip, blip, blip. And if you take care of it now, it will be this much instead of later on it becomes this one. And I'll give you a very simple example. So the passing away of some of the devotees in our community, it's been a very challenging time for many of us. Even before this situation that we're in with that pandemic, I'm not going to get into that. But even before that, we still had many devotees who were on special diets, who had health issues. And when I look at why that was, I could see that one of the reasons was, as devotees, we understand that we're not the body, but we didn't understand that, yes, you're not the body, but you still have a body, dude. And we want to take care of the body so that the body does not cause us more distraction as we get older. Now, we don't want to overdo it, obviously. But I saw that many people, they weren't exercising. We were at a retreat with Satchinanda Maharaj at the beginning of the year, and he got the devotees to do a bit of exercise. And what I found very interesting, I was looking around and I could see how fast Maharaj was going, and I was looking around and I was seeing many people in that room, they could not keep up and they were struggling. And I thought, I saw this, okay, this is an omen. These people who are struggling, they're not doing any regular exercise, right? So what's going to happen is that body is going to give me some hassle later on. So we can catch things when they're this small. And this is actually something they even talk about in the secular field. Before I became a devotee, I read a book on the secret of genius. And in the book, it talked about meditation and so on. And it said the people who take this time to reflect and meditate, one of the qualities of such people is that they're able to pick up on issues before they manifest. And they're able to address issues when it's relatively easy to address. And I remember it was a very good book. And one of the things it said in the book is not only are they able to pick up on issues early, but they remove obstacles in their life that other people don't even see in their life, right? So it's like, you don't see that a crisis should have come up in this person's life, but he picked up the crisis in its early form, in its dormant form. See, the mode of goodness allows you to have a more subtle vision. The mode of goodness allows you to pick up things when they're subtle, before they become a gross issue, and to steer through it in that particular way, okay? So then you can, this is what we mean by nididhyasana, right? This is what you're going to get with that feedback, the Bhakti 360. Yeah, go for that Bhakti 360 with your friends. Okay, let's take maybe one or two. Sunita, okay, so thank you, Sunita, for your comment. Really appreciated that. What's the difference between understanding and developing realization? Fantastic point. So, very good question. So when we do manana, we have a certain level of deeper insight into something. A very interesting way that realization is described is that it's the difference between having a series of points which you've written down about how to drive. Let's say you want to learn to drive. You've got all the points listed. All right, to drive, you have to do this, you have to turn the ignition on, you have to, press this, you have to press that. You understand all the points, they've been written down. That's one thing. But when you actually get in the car and you do the driving, you start the car, you actually engage in the activity, that gives you realization. Because now it's no longer one-dimensional, where it's an intellectual understanding only, where you understand the points, but rather now it's a three-dimensional experience. You know what it's like to actually immersively experience the same thing that previously you understood. So Prabhupada speaks about Gyan, right, which is the understanding, and Vigyan, which is the realized experience. Okay, so we will stop there. I don't want to go over time. I'm not sure what the time frame is, but I also have a few other responsibilities this evening. It's really wonderful spending time with you. But I really mean what I said. We have to apply our teaching more. Krishna consciousness is wonderful. It's a revelation. It's blissful. But many of us are not tasting it in the way that we should. And it's not because the philosophy is wrong, right? It's not because the philosophy is wrong. It's because we don't understand it properly, and we either don't apply it or we don't apply it properly. So two tools, practical things that you're going to do. After we log off, we're going to ask you to find and commit to your reflection time. Where are you going to have that reflection time? I don't care if it's once a day. I don't care if it's once a week. You decide, because you know your schedule. You know what's realistic for you. Where's your reflection time, and how are you going to reflect? Is it going to be writing? Is it going to be journaling? Is it going to be speaking to other people? Please get your Bhakti 360 as well. That's item number one. Item number two, and you may want to do this in the same session, I'm going to encourage you, now let's make our mind our best friend. I want you to make your mind your best friend by starting to engage your mind only, exclusively in the things that you do want to see play out in your Krishna consciousness. Imagine yourself reading the Bhagavatam and really being enthusiastic and attentive in the reading. Imagine yourself going to the morning program every day and really being absorbed and feeling so. And when you imagine yourself, don't just imagine it. Bring your emotions, your positive emotions to that imagination. Imagine those scenarios where you are experiencing and being absorbed in a higher level of Krishna consciousness. For some of you, it may be imagine yourself going to bed early, right? You always decide it because Krishna's in your heart. He's in our heart. Can you imagine? He just wants to know. What does Prabhupada say? He says, Krishna, he's directing the desires, the wanderings of the living entities, right? Man proposes, Prabhupada says. Man proposes, God disposes. So Krishna's in your heart, and he's saying, dude, you don't seem to know what you want. I'm ready to give you something. I'm ready to give you something favorable to your Krishna consciousness. Because God, Prabhupada says this in Bhagavad Gita in the purple, God helps those who help themselves. He wants to give you more than you have right now. But we're using our gifts against ourselves. Mental self-sabotage. So imagine yourself sleeping on time and waking up on time and chanting. Imagine yourself relishing your chanting and being so absorbed and feeling, this is amazing. Imagine yourself preaching and reaching new people. Imagine yourself being absorbed in your Krishna consciousness. Imagine yourself giving more seminars or courses and people being receptive. Engage all your senses in the imagination. So see it, hear it, engage your emotions, and be prepared for Krishna to work even more amazing things in your spiritual life. Thank you very much for your time and your association. And we look forward to hearing about your future successes. And imagine seeing the entire world being Krishna consciousness, being fully Krishna conscious. Seeing, the heads of state, all the heads of big businesses, they're all fully Krishna conscious and they're loving it. Thank you very much for your time, and know that what you imagine is going to come true, and Krishna is going to do it, and it's just a question of time. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.